Welcome to elenasbarre low impact full body workouts. On this channel you find different format workouts that will help you to tone up your muscles, improve your posture, gain overall strength, endurance, balance and flexibility. Check more classes on elenasbarre Patreon. Join us for my crazy piano practice on Sundays. We also talk about controversial topics that can trigger you. You participate in our conversations voluntarily at your own risk. Read the disclaimer in the description box. If you don't want to be mentally or physically challenged, I suggest that you skip this video. Thank you so much for your understanding. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to elenasbarre low impact full body workouts. My name is Elena. I'm your host. I have a few special guests today, and we have a new face here. This is Nick. Hi, Nick from Christianity Unplugged.
Hey guys,
the layout. Yeah, Nick, people are new to you. They haven't seen you before on my channel. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up in the manosphere?
Okay. I was a Orthodox Presbyterian pastor, so I was a pastor in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. I was a bit of a troublemaker. I fought for the patriarchy, defended some ministers that were being canceled and through church bureaucracies and feminists on the internet. I was doing that for a few years and I got zeroed out by my ex-wife. I had a history of being beaten by her, and I kind of never told anyone till like a few months before everything happened. And anyways, she was acting shady, so we had an agreement to check each other's phones. So I took her phone to check her phone, and she started jumping after me or chasing me around the house, trying to tackle me, hit me. And so as I did what I usually did, I ran next door to the church, and the police were called. And they invaded the church, arrested me for domestic violence. So it was a false domestic violence. And then, you know, of course, I found out that she had made plans to leave me like beforehand while I was looking on the phone. And yeah, then I had a fight for child custody as she made stuff up there. You know, finally got the custody evaluation done through a third party. Of course, is all shown to be a bunch of crap because it was crap. So I found the manosphere. I knew about the manosphere beforehand when I was fighting for the patriarchy, but really dove into the red pill content while I got my life wrecked.
Yeah, how many kids do you have, Nick?
I have 7.
7 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And how long have you been married?
11 years.
Wow. So she just decided one day she doesn't want to be with you anymore, and
yeah, well, there's a long history of lying and stuff, and
yeah.
But she was being aided by church women.
Ooh.
Gossiping about the pastor's wives. Yeah, so.
Oh, this is so crazy. This is why church is no longer man's friend.
Oh no.
If you go to church, you will be prosecuted.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the state hates men too, so it's, you know, it's a losing battle. So once this happens to you, you're already guilty in the eyes of everyone. They've taken your kids away, they've done everything, and you have to fight everything as presumed to be a guilty monster.
Yeah. And it's sad because we also teach this same stuff in schools, in colleges, and church confirms this. So women can get away with their bad behavior in all of the institutions.
Mm-hmm. Now, rarely are they held to account for their accusations that they make.
Yeah. Well, today I wanted to dive into one topic in particular. We were going to talk about the values. And guys, if you haven't joined the Bible study yet, Glenn Lawrence is running the Bible study with Nick. I'm going to share the link with you to the Bible study. Please join us. We cover a lot of interesting topics there. We are reading the Bible. And we have a lot of fun there. So there you go. Here is the link that you can click on to join the Bible study. And yeah, today I was thinking of talking about the values, because we see the trad wives are teaching women how to attract the high value man. And then there are a lot of relationship gurus who are effectively doing the same thing. So let's just break ice for everyone. And according to the Bible, Nick, and you brought up a very interesting point yesterday during the Bible study, where you were talking about nature. So could you maybe, if you want to share the slide with you, if it helps you, or just tell us what should women look for in a man?
Okay, so we're talking about in reference to nature. So traditionally, so I'll just address it this way. Current, like modern church-going people do not want to talk about nature and and how it reflects on what a man or woman should be. They shied away from what we call the light of nature, or like natural law, especially the past like 100 years or so, if not more. But if you look historically speaking, you have like the confessions of the church talk about the light of nature, like the Westminster Confession of Faith talks about the light of nature, and it reflects the Bible passages, like particularly like two places, 1 Corinthians 11 and Deuteronomy 22 verse 5. Those usually are always kind of referenced together, and so we can start there. So the Bible talks about nature. And what modern commentators would want to do when they especially go to 1 Corinthians 11, I'm going to put it on the screen here. Go. Share screen. Where is it? Window. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Okay, let me add it to the stage.
Okay. So it says, every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head, but every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head, for that is even as all one, as if she were shaven. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head, because of the angels. Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman. But all things of God. It says, judge in yourselves, is it comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered? Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering. So we see here the scripture, a lot of we see here scripture referencing nature for the basis of its doctrine, for how a man and woman are to be. I think I would say concerning the public worshiping of God, but also just in general how a man and woman's hair is supposed to be according to their nature. What's interesting though is a lot of the modern commentators, they want to make everything about the culture and tradition of Corinth, right? They said, no, it's all about what happened in Corinth with the prostitutes having their heads shaven, and man wanting to have long, effeminate, long hair. They want to make everything in relation to the culture of the Corinthians, which is really, really terrible and promiscuous. But they'll do that, and then they'll try to circumvent the meaning in the text, or try to shed a different light than is to get around what the text is clearly saying. You can see the same attempts on like rendering each other their conjugal rights. They'll try to use the try to get into the Corinthian culture to get away from Paul's implied meaning, because modern women don't want to. A lot of modern women want to withhold themselves from their husbands sexually. So, anyways, the point is, what's interesting though is what is the context being referred to here? Is it Corinth? What does the scripture itself tell as the context of its own teaching? What does the text say? Verse 14. The reference is not Corinth. The reference is not the culture. The reference is nature itself. So nature itself transcends culture, but it ought to inform culture. So nature itself teaches us, readily observable fact, what a man ought to be and what a woman ought to be. Of course, scripture makes things more clear, as it does here, even commentating upon nature in this specific portion of scripture. So what is it saying about men and women then, according to nature? Well, a man is not to have his head covered in worship because he's the image and glory of God, of Christ. There's an order, God, then Christ as the head of the human race, the mediator, then man, then woman. That's the hierarchy, the created natural hierarchy. And so that's to be reflected in their nature, but also the attire perhaps reflecting nature. Because woman is of man, woman was created for the man, not man for the woman. Therefore, she's have the power on her head. So it could be this power on her head to reflect the natural order. This is actually a really debated part. But it's usually there's two solutions. The most common two is the power on her head is the head covering. This is to reflect so her dress or decorum is to reflect the natural hierarchy that God has established. Or it could be have a subtle shift in meaning, like John Lightfoot was a Westminster divine. He actually took this other position. He says, no, this is not about really directly about order. It's indirectly about order, he would say, basically. But it's primarily about decorum and worship. He would say he would focus on, like, because of the angels. So, like, even the angels themselves, like the seraphim, cover themselves before the face of God, saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. Right? And so they would say the angels are looking in. They themselves have a proper decorum in the worship of God. So should the man and the woman. So it's perhaps like the woman, reflecting the order of God, but it's particularly about proper decorum and worship. There's more you could get into that there, but the point is that there's a proper decorum, right?
So we're talking about getting into church, right? Women have to cover themselves.
So church itself doesn't abrogate the natural order. So it should be a place where the natural order is exemplified.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, though, we'll get to what a woman should be like, what a man should be like, is if she's not covered, if she doesn't want to be covered, he says they're trying to shame these women here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he's basically saying, if you don't want to be covered, right, in verse 6, then let her be shorn. Cut off her hair. Now, that's what's interesting is both for the Hebrew mind and the Corinth mind, it was a shame. A shaving was like a shame of, like, war brides, having to cleanse yourself. But also for the Corinthians, that meant you were a whore. So
Nick, the shaving of the heads thing, I saw pictures during World War II of French men shaving the heads of the women who were collaborating with the Germans.
Yeah, that happened in Holland too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is not even like an old timey thing. Like,
it's a shaming thing. It's natural.
well,
yeah, you're right.
The the thing about the word natural, I think, is we've gotten so focused on the physical natural world, and I'm not sure we really understand what you mean by nature here anymore.
Well, that itself is you can take nature in two different sense. You have to be careful. So nature is like reality as it is, even in its fallenness, or you could say nature as it, how God created the world, how he originally designed it, not how it's marred. But you could say, even though reality is marred, you can still look at cultures throughout the world. There's still a sense in which people, without being blinded by their sin, know what ought to be. So like, you still know what, like, depending on how blinded yourself are, you know what ought to be, right? Like, children are some of the best examples of this. So like, just say you have these transformers, right? And this transformer, it's obviously a man trying to look like a woman, and he tells a child, "I'm a girl," and it's like, "No, you're not." It's like
they've had
was
to
it
do
Billy
a lot
Madison? Billy Madison in the elementary school.
Oh, that's an old movie there.
I'm just saying, like, the kids knew, like, boys have a and a girls have a
Well, it's why they've had to get so heavy-handed with the indoctrination when they're young.
Right. I'm just saying, you can be blinded, so you can be blinded to the light of nature, but it usually takes some programming. And we're very programmed where we think like a shorn woman's a good thing. Like, I get, like, people have cancer and stuff, like, that's not their fault. Like, I'm not, like, there's exceptions, but everybody thinks the exception should be the rule. So,
well, I don't think it's a good thing, but I mean,
right, it's not a good thing. That's why women still get wigs, right, when they have cancer.
But you can also see Elena's hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many women with short hair today that they kind of shame themselves.
Right. Well, it's a feminist culture, so they want to be the man. They want to wear the pants,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying like wearing pants is wrong, but I'm sorry, women generally look better in dresses, like a feminine attire looks better on a woman. I think, like, more, stuff that kind of blurs the lines a little bit, even though generally I would say okay. But anyways, it's a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, right? So it's shameful, right, to be shorn or shaven. So let her be covered.
Yeah.
And it's not talking about this covering is both a natural covering and like the I would say the head covering as well, because they're particularly talking about a physical covering of a man's head, not his long hair. But anyway, so there's the idea that's unnatural for the woman to have shorn or shaven hair. It's not according to the light of nature. See, if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her in verse 15. So God says that's good.
So men should be looking for a woman with long hair.
Right. Right. And men should not have long hair, because verse 14 says, doesn't nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it's a shame unto him? In fact, it's a sign of effeminacy, being like a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That was what Absalom did. So let's go off on this a little bit. So Absalom was like the fake king, right? He wanted to usurp his father. Perhaps he had he was a fake Nazarite. So and everybody liked him for his looks and long hair, but he tried to overthrow his father. But who do we think of having long hair in the Old Testament besides Absalom?
Samson.
But why did he have long hair?
That was his strength, wasn't it?
Because he was a Nazarite.
Exactly. So having long hair is not it's not a good thing, except for the exception of a particular vow before God, the Nazarite vow.
See, I was sort of, I had it going through my head. You know, our main dude Jesus was he's
Jesus didn't have long hair. Yeah.
But he's always pictured in it.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So if you look at early depiction, I'm against depictions of Jesus, right? But nowhere in Scripture does Jesus said having like this long flowing mane of hair.
It says that he has hair like wool.
Right.
That means it was kind of nappy.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Like
it doesn't
a little
mean
mini afro puff.
But he didn't have this long hair. Even like the early Mosaic depictions, it kind of modeled him off of the Greek god Apollos. But again, I'm against the depictions of Jesus, but they depicted him with short hair in the early church, the early Mosaics. He didn't have. It was later that he developed having long hair in the history of the church.
Well, the more feminized church has become, the longer his hair had to be, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, but what does Scripture say, though? If a man have long hair, it clearly says, and this is not according to Corinth, this is not according to culture, this is not according to changing standards. It's according to nature itself. If a man has long hair, it's a shame unto him. He's looking like a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Deuteronomy 22, verse 5 is the one that forbids cross-dressing, like a woman trying to look like a man and a man looking like a woman.
Well, basically, it disqualifies transgender.
Right. Transgender. So women should be looking for what in a man? So basically a man that's not girly. And a man should be looking for a woman that's not manly.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace your nature. Embrace, if you're a woman, your femininity, and if you're a man, embrace your manlyhood. Embrace your biology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went then to like where you see what kind of man you don't want to, you see, what kind of men women should not want. Let's talk about the effeminate ones besides, the long hair, but their character. So like Isaiah 3:12 talks about, children oppress you and women rule over you. Oh, those who lead you cause you to err. Oecolampadius was a reformer, about contemporary with Luther and Zwingli. He speaks of effeminate rulers being, they're supposed to be men, but they were like women. How? That they give way to their passions, being cowardly, retiring, ceding, yielding like a woman. In Isaiah 3:12, Calvin says, feeble and cowardly, therefore, must be the minds of those who obey delicate and effeminate men and permit themselves to be oppressed by them, nor can it be doubted that God is struck with the spirit of cowardice, those who offer their shoulders. And like the Genevan Bible margin note. So this was hated by the King of England because it was critical of him. But it was the most popular Protestant Bible out there. And it had pretty good commentary in the margin notes. Even after the King James was finished in 1611 for probably about half a century. And I think it was the official Bible of the Church of Scotland, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, it says on Isaiah 3:12, because the wicked people were more addicted to their princes than to the commandments of God, he shows that he would give them such princes by whom they should have no help, but that should be manifest tokens of his wrath, because they should be fools and effeminate. And Jeremiah 51 verse 30 talks about women becoming like men, soldiers. It says they became women, that they were like women as to courage, for no one fared to oppose the conquerors. They all became women as to courage. So talking and like talks about soft and effeminate when God proceeded to destroy Nineveh. God indeed can leave in men their perverseness so that they may run furiously into ruin and not be able with a courageous heart to repel the attacks of their enemies. God enervates men and strips them of all courage when he gives them over to destruction. He says, now we now perceive the prophet's meaning when he says the people would become women or effeminate in the midst of the city, and its very bowels, as though he had said they would not cease to tremble, even while they were dwelling in a safe place. So it's the idea that men generally, they have a psychological makeup of being courageous. Not that women can't be courageous in their own way, but men have that generally a psychological makeup of being stalwart in the face of danger and adversity. So women should be looking for a man that's courageous, that he knows what he believes in, that he's strong, he's able to protect, he's able to stand firm in what he believes, and he's able to protect those under him. So a mental fortitude and a physical fortitude. A woman should look for that in a man.
Well, and this is where I think a lot of women are misled, because there are men who are bulky, who are ripped with muscles, and they do defend what they believe in, which is the blue pill mindset, right? The feminized version of the Bible, let's say. They are capable of defending, but they are not defending the right thing.
Right. That's true in the history of the world. What do you think, Glenn? Glenn, you there?
He's muted.
Yes, I am here. What was the question exactly? Because I was just trying to play catch up with everything.
She's talking about the blue pill mindset of, she talks about there's some blue pill men being strong and able to fight for what they believe in. And we're saying that, women should look for a man that is also, physically strong, but also has that mental fortitude.
Yeah, I think, the Bible's really clear on how men are supposed to be. They're supposed to be, physically strong, mentally strong, and, and strong with, wisdom, and, they're supposed to be courageous. So, there's a lot of people that are courageous, but that don't have the ability. They're not strong enough to actually do anything about it. And so, being strong mentally, emotionally, physically is important for a guy. I mean, those are really good characteristics to have for a man. It shows that when things go south, when things are bad, they could rely on you. If you have that, it provides stability even in the worst, of situations. Right. Now, if your guy is crying right next to you, rocking on the floor with his head between his knees, just as you are, you're not going to see that guy as someone very, capable to protect you or strong to help defend you.
Yeah. Like, so like, I know women want to say they want to open, emotionally available guy.
No, they don't.
Really, they say they do. It sounds good to them, but when it happens to them, they are actually generally disgusted and they don't feel safe.
They say that until when they see it happens and they realize like they just suddenly have this disgust in their guy. They're like, gosh, that's disgusting. Please don't ever do that again.
They're revolted because naturally they expect a man to be strong and be able to be there for them to rely upon them. And the man's proving that he's not able to do that, but in their mind, but they're still saying they want the emotional support guy, the guy that's very open with his emotions and expresses himself.
So Nick, I was thinking about this in a different context. Elena, she gets all gooey when I pick her up.
Okay.
And so it's not just a defense context, but also just in the relationship, she gets all gooey. Like women like that, and I can just pick her up and it's like a hug type thing, but like women like that too. They like a man that is strong, and it doesn't have to be strong going out and getting in fights all the time, right? Strong for her too, right? Just it's a different context, but I don't think we, like it matters to women in all contexts that you are strong mentally and physically.
Sorry, I got somebody's car alarm going off in the background.
And strong doesn't mean you have to display your strength all the time either.
Exactly.
You don't have to go out of your way, like, see how strong I am.
And I think this is where a lot of women are misled, because they see a ripped guy and they notice that he is capable of defending them, but the mindset is not there for guys. And because women are lost, they are brainwashed, right? The guys are also brainwashed to be this servant leader. So no matter how he looks, he has to be like a better man. He has to do what she tells him to do, right? The masculinity is not there. Even though he is ripped, he has the muscles. I think this is where women are confusing the body with the mindset, or they only focus on the physical aspect, which historically men were focusing on how a woman looks. Men are evaluating women based on her appearance. Now we see that even the evaluation method has changed for women. They are evaluating men based on male criteria. How men.
Well, let me show an example here, Elena. Let me give you a good visual example here. 1 second, bear with me. Okay, perfect. Here we go. I'm gonna need to share or present.
Yep, present.
Yeah, I'm gonna in a second. Okay. 1, 2. There we go. Perfect. Share screen. Windows. Okay. This picture here of myself competing.
There you go.
I look like I'm extremely strong, right? You see all the muscle definition. I won my class when I was competing. Strong, right? I know, counting sheep, you love this stuff. But actually, what if I told you I was actually at my weakest at that point? Like I if I got into a fight, I'd probably just roll over and die, because I was completely water depleted, completely depleted on food, right? Like it took a lot to get your body to look that way on stage. Now, the way that I am now, I don't have ab definition. I'm not like that. I don't look that great or that lean right now, but I'm stronger now than I was in that picture.
Right.
So aesthetics, looks doesn't necessarily mean strength. You may see guys that are like really ripped and chiseled out. That doesn't mean they're strong. That means that they are, it just means that their body fat is low enough where you can see that type of definition. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean strength at all. Yes, I know, accounting sheep. You got me. I'm just trying to get people to sign up for my OnlyFans. You got me.
Well, it kind of reminded me when I did I wasn't a very good wrestler in high school, but I did that a little bit. I just remember how crazy it was to like try to deprive ourselves of water and not eat to make that weight threshold.
Oh yeah,
but you really couldn't perform that well being like that.
No, you need that carb. You need that recarb. You need the carb back up and that refeed meal to get you even get your head right.
Oh yeah,
get your
brain fog. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
So,
I would lose count of like my reps as I'm working out. I'm like, which number am I on? Like, I can't even count to 12 without forgetting where I'm at.
And Glenn, this reminds me of the guy who ended up shooting Osama bin Laden. he was this small, wiry little Navy SEAL. He's like, you wouldn't have expected him. You know, we think of Navy SEAls as that they look like you did on stage, but no, he was this wiry little dude. He's about, I think he was like 5'8", you know, it's like, he does not look anything like a guy you would think would survive SEAL training.
Yeah, like most of the guys that are like special forces, they're not super jack chads.
There's crazy.
They're mentally they're more mentally strong than physically strong. They just know how to use their physical abilities, and they know tactics and techniques that could benefit them against a guy that is super jacked. You know, they just have a training and a set of tools that makes them lethal. They're not always like most of the guys that are like SEALs. They're like they have like a swimmer's body. You know, like you know they may not necessarily have you know, ab definition or not. Some of them don't even really resemble any like serious muscle definition at all. They look like average guys, but go ahead and test them. I dare you.
No, I will pass. Thank you.
Isn't that saying something that it's more difficult to train that mental fortitude than the body?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's what the Bible even says. You know, physical fitness is of some use.
Right.
You know, it's not saying it's not of any use. It's
Yeah,
still
you don't need to be fat because that'll impact your thinking anyways.
Yep.
Yeah, you ladies need a man who has mental fortitude, not just the physical fortitude. And what women might not like about the red pill is you might have some guys that don't have strong frame yet, although red pill does teach some sort of frame, you know. But the pickup artistry is like a shortcut for men to get with to fool the woman's their woman's mate selection, right? Or
The hypergamous filter.
oh, they read the coding, and so they know if they get ripped and they display, you know, certain characteristics, that it increases their chances of the woman, you know, pre-selecting them. So that means women, you should not just judge with how a guy looks. I mean, yeah, you want to be attracted to the guy, but you know, you need to have some wisdom and dig a little. Dig a little deeper. Make sure.
Are you basically saying that like women should not take advantage of their short-term mating phase of their life? Is that the general?
Oh yeah, I mean it's sin. Yeah, you
thing
shouldn't do that. So we're telling what they ought to do, because obviously I'm not just a guy who reads red pill. I believe what the Bible says. So you know, I believe there's a moral law, and you know, all God's people should obey God regardless if they're a man or a woman. So
I agree. I concur.
right. So women, you know, women like men don't need to go hoe around. You should look not just on mere physical beauty, even though you should be attracted to the person physically, but what is their mind like? Does the woman, for the women, if you're looking at a man, does he not only show physical characteristics, but does he show like a mature mind, but also mental fortitude?
I think when it comes down to it, is like, you know, guys tend to obsess over looks more than women do.
Mm-hmm.
Although that, I mean, let's be honest, like there's been plenty of very attractive women that are, when you see their husbands, you're kind of like, wait, what? You know, like she's with him. Like, how did that happen? And that guy may not be the most attractive aesthetically, but he ends up hitting every other thing on her list.
Right.
You know, he may have the provision. He may have the very dominant masculine presence that she desires. He may have, like, you know, everything else that she looks for. Guys, we tend to go hot or not. Like that's pretty much like, you know, like that's as far as we tend to go. We're like, does she make my thingy salute. As long as she does that, she is marriageable.
Oh man,
And
they didn't read Proverbs, did they?
no, they didn't. And we get mad at women for having this like long list of criteria for guys. When anything, we should actually be adopting that model and be like, hey, actually, we should actually have a longer list of, of a criteria and standards than just does she make my thingy wave?
Hey, we have a longer list. It's 3 things now, Glenn, right?
What are the 3 things again?
Well, besides being attractive, but
Mhm.
you know, for a godly wife, you want her to, you know, cook, clean, and sexual
Oh yes,
availability.
yes. Drain the main vein.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I mean, but
but it should be longer than that. But yeah, that's
it's like, you know, I mean, at my age, I'm pushing 40. I will turn down a gorgeous woman if she is like her attitude is not there. If it's her attitude is confrontational, if she is one of those boss bees, high maintenance, that just turned me off.
It's not feminine.
Mm-mm.
It's like, why would you like? No, like we go out to work, like guys are around men all day. Why do we want to come home to the same?
Yeah, like, you know, guys, you know, we have a tendency to talk ourselves out of a good thing when it comes to women.
Yeah.
I'm at the age where it's like, women, you could talk yourself out of good things when it comes, you know, to guys. And women are not used to that. Have you guys ever denied a woman because of her attitude or what she says? Most guys haven't. Most guys are not even gonna try to even do something like that. It's unheard of. But in reality, if you guys do that, just watch how much the way they react. Like they don't know what the hell just happened. It's like you just hit them with the 1-2 combination and they're dazed and confused.
It's true. It's true, fellas. It works. I've done it. And I mean, I really didn't want to talk to the girl I'm thinking of after that. It's just you hit a point in life where you're like, you know,
the juice ain't worth the squeeze, man.
Well, it's like
exactly.
it doesn't compute for them. It's like malfunction, like system, you know, is overloaded. Like they just it doesn't compute.
Right.
Yeah. It's weird.
Well, they were taught that they can get away with pretty much anything. And coming back to the criteria, how we are evaluating each other, they are judging men based on the physical looks only. This is one of the reasons why they want to hang out with the super chats, you know, the F boys that are hot. So I can see the connection here, how men are evaluating women. Is she hot and available? Yes. And then a woman looks at the guy and she asks herself the same question. Oh, is he hot? If he is hot, then I'll open my legs for him, right? Because women control access to sex, men control access to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And then she decides to sleep with him. And instead of choosing the good man who is not only physically attractive, right? Women are lacking a lot of wisdom, as you guys are saying, in evaluating men.
Excuse me.
Well, I think it comes down to that we're trying to turn the entire world into some androgynous hellhole by saying that women need to evaluate men on the same characteristics and ways that men evaluate women. Because Glenn's absolutely right. Men tend to look at women, go, "You're hot. I will get with you." You know, maybe not for long term if I can't stand your personality, but hey, you make the little guy salute, right? And so we're trying to say that women should be doing the same thing.
Little guy.
Mhm.
Sorry.
had to throw that one out there for you guys. but it's that just comes down to this culture of we need men and women to be the same. We don't want to celebrate the differences. We don't want to evaluate somebody on the basis of, like, you know, you're looking for different qualities in a person. You know, like, I hate to use this term, Nick, but it's like the men and women complement each other. They're not
Right.
the same.
That's true.
See, that's where the words like complementarian kind of gets like, more
Right.
affirmed, because men and women do complement each other.
Right.
But so that would makes people think like, oh, well, complementarians is just the best way to go about it, because it hangs on the word that we all agree on, that men and women are complements to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So that has to be the right thing, right? Well, no, not when you really look into it.
Mhm.
What I see as the problem today is like is what we're kind of discussing on Rule 0, is that we have this bastardized words to the point where certain words don't mean anything anymore. Like,
Right.
what is marriage? How would you guys define marriage today?
I would say it's a covenant between the man and a woman in the sight of God.
Not what it's supposed to be, but what it is today.
Oh,
Well, it's
Yeah.
clearly a lifelong full commitment by both parties that always works out.
Yeah, right, Sam.
would
It's
say-
like I would say it's a temporary, convenient contract of partners, or like multiple partners, or like
I call it a tax break.
tax break. Yeah.
You know, I would
think
even
what's
What I was going to say as well.
go ahead.
What is that, Emma? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
It's
that.
financial nowadays.
Oh,
Mm.
I was gonna say something that would make some people, well, not people here angry, but like think about when I was in college, I was reading up on Islam, and somehow there's this talk about how they could legally whore by like temporary marriages or something.
What do you mean?
So
Temporary
like,
marriages?
yeah, so like that's how they get around. They can get around.
Oh yeah,
people.
you can like
Yeah.
they'll get married to the chick for the day, and like you can
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
it's like she's a prostitute, and you can just bang her out, and then
yeah. So
tomorrow
I
you're
think
no longer
I
married.
think that at least like they're just apply that to like modern society. It's just a little longer term.
Yeah,
It seems to me like marriage has become a convenient label that makes everyone feel okay with, like, I want to have some kids now, so I got to slap on the marriage label, get my kids, and then cut the rope
Well,
when I'm done.
well, it's like marriage has become an understanding that like, okay, for what you think is unlimited access to vagina, you are willing to financially provide for this other individual and any offspring that individual bears you until they determine that you are no longer of use. Right? That's really what marriage is today.
It's very disposable, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no true meaning. There's no like
Commitment.
deeper meaning other than that today. I mean, just look how easily people are getting divorced over the most insignificant reasons. And so does marriage mean anything anymore? Well, no, we have a society have determined that it doesn't mean anything. Regardless what Nick or I will say that marriage is supposed to be, what it ought to be, it was designed to be, biblically speaking, that's irrelevant, because until everybody upholds that view of it, it just means exactly what people are making it mean today.
And
That's why when I say like I don't support,
something.
that's why I say I don't support the way we do marriage today. It's not that I don't support marriage or I don't believe in marriage. I don't believe in the way that we do it today, because the way that we do it today does not resemble the way that it was designed to be. It doesn't hold the same meaning that the original definition of it means. So that's where definitions are important. We have redefined things to meet our standards rather than us meet the standards of the definition that it has originally. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know people that have got married and excuse me, that when they eventually split up about 8 years later, they both turned around and said, well, we didn't expect it to last forever. And it's like, well, why did you get married then? That's literally what the vows mean.
Well, it's almost like, well, they wanted to get married so they could, not sin, and even though they didn't like really think it's gonna last forever. They were just like, we'll just go until it ends.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a big one. The not sitting part. It's like, oh well, we always
societal
told us that we could finally have
respectability.
sex once we get married.
I mean, I
Mhm.
backed out of my own wedding years ago purely for this reason, because I could picture myself standing there and saying the vows. I just couldn't picture myself actually meaning them. And I thought that's not what marriage is about. So I pulled out
Yeah.
a week before. I was popular, but
Yeah,
At
well,
least you're
okay,
honest.
Emma, but that's more honest. That's
hey guys,
more
I
honest.
do got a jet though. I got a jet, so
Well,
I gotta
thank
hop
you,
on the
Glenn.
dragon ship. I'll see you
Yeah.
guys later.
All right.
See you.
See you.
Take care.
Later.
Mhm.
Well, Emma, I honestly think that's more honest.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I said.
that's
Yeah.
one thing I am, is very honest, and I try to honor my integrity.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's better than most.
See,
I'm
I
nothing
would
but a
say-
liar. I never speak the truth. Sorry, guys.
We did stay together for another 18 months, which kind of, which means our marriage wouldn't have worked. So
Yeah.
We have a comment here from Melody. Let's look at it. There is a big difference between mating strategies of women who were raised with a highly visual internet and women who were not, though. Also, women from big cities where the climate is clement.
I think she meant
An
cement.
element.
Oh, cement. Okay.
I don't know if I agree with that concept. I think the mating strategies, I think the general mating strategy of a woman is going to be the same cross-culturally, but the way women affect it is definitely influenced by culture. So I both agree and disagree. But there's going to be different methods by which girls try to get their mating strategy accomplished, depending on what tools they have at their disposal. But ultimately, they're still going to want the same things. That's what I would say to that. And also, hello, Melody.
Yeah, we miss you, Mel. Thank you for writing a comment here. Yeah.
So I would say like female, she say it differs. I mean, sure, I guess how you raised could impact you, but also it's also we live in a society and culture. Well, there's always sin throughout human history in light of the fall. So women's sexual strategy, depending on how they're raised, and if they're a believer or not, they still want the best viable option that they can get, and you can't really blame them for that. However,
It's a good thing that they want that.
right, and so that's hypergamy. I don't really buy into the evolutionary stuff there, but the idea that a woman wants the best man she can get, nothing wrong with that. The problem is where she tries to lure in a guy like a beta provider, a guy that'll provide for her, he'll take care of her, he's kind or something like that, or nice, and she can kind of manipulate him, and then she'll appreciate him that maybe short term for that, or isolate a certain aspect of her attraction to that, but also still try to get with like another guy on the side, or monkey branch out of that relationship to the other guy when she doesn't feel fulfilled, because she still wants like the strong, attractive appearance guy, versus the guy that's say.
Well, it could be her biology demands it, and also remember, women were taught for multiple generations that they should pursue their happiness.
Their what?
Their happiness. Women should pursue their happiness. It could be also something that they've been taught for multiple generations now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, biology definitely has something to do with it when they are looking for the best guy that they can possibly get to take care of themselves, take care of the future children, right? But it's also like, make sure it's the man who gives you tinglies, make sure that it's the right man. I actually would like to get your view on the right man concept. I'm sure that you've heard it before.
Okay.
Used by feminists when they say, well, you only submit to the right man. You can do all of these nice things. Even Treadwives are saying this. Make sure, ladies, that you are this traditional wife, right? You
Right.
are a nice woman. You cook, you clean, you submit to your husband, but he must be the leader. He must be the right man.
So my take on that, the right man. Well, whoever you marry is the right man, so you have to submit to the man you marry. You already made that problem if you got it to with the guy you can't respect and you don't want to internally submit to. Too bad, too late. You made those vows, you entered into marriage, and you should uphold them and do what God says. That's just what God says. It's what you should do. But if you're not married yet, you should look for a man that you can respect, that you do respect. Look for a man that is strong in himself, mentally, but outwardly, that you're also attracted. So physical attraction, characteristic attraction. He's an upright man, good morals, strong internally, externally, but also he's able to provide for a family. So you might have a man that's strong, but he can't provide for a family, and that will later create resentment in that relationship, and therefore you won't respect him.
Right.
And so, yeah, you need to look for a man who has those three general characteristics. I mean, there's more. You don't want a violent man. You want a man that has the capacity for violence, but is in control. So that's, again, a mental fortitude thing. So a provider, a protector, but also strong and attractive, mentally, physically. What else could you look for in a man? Anybody have any other? That's what I see the Bible primarily talking about is, and that's what you hear repeated over and over and over by sermons, commentators, even like some of the more blue-pilled guys. They just don't focus so much on the biological aspect as much. They want to over-spiritualize things about men. So.
Yeah, I remember Emma mentioned a few weeks ago that a man needs to be mentally and physically stronger than she is. This is something you mentioned, right, Emma?
Yep.
Yeah. And I see how this one in particular can have problem in understanding with the feminists. Like, let's say, okay, I'm not talking about you, Emma, here, but imagine like a strong superhero woman out there who is a boss babe and she is a control freak, right? So she says these things that a man needs to be so much stronger than she is, because when she is surrounded by a weak man, she feels like she has no choice but to wear pants in the family.
Oh, that reminds me of like the boss babes. So like they made something, they think of themselves, and maybe they have, but then they can't find a man because the men that she'd want are not interested in her.
Right.
They already found somebody younger and more eager to submit, easier to please, that's easier to please. And so she's not going to find a man, and my thought left me, but she's not going to find a man that's interested in her, and she's outclassed herself. So
she became the man that she wanted to marry.
Right.
She's so like, and women generally don't understand this. Guys don't care about so much of your success and all your degrees. Like we don't for sure. I don't think men want to marry a retard. Like, okay, I'm not like,
yeah. There's something to be said for
people
being able to have an interesting conversation with someone, right?
Right. You want to be able to have a conversation, talk to them, but you don't want to marry an imbecile. So, and I don't think women want to marry one either. Right. So I think that's mutual, but guys don't care about your degrees. Like, we just don't. So yeah, so what happens is the woman, not only are men not interested in her, but she's actually taken herself out by putting herself on such a high pedestal internally, but it doesn't relate to what men actually want. And so she expects more because she's had that lifestyle of more, and she's not going to want to have less than she's been able to have in a feminist system.
Well, yeah, and this is another problem. Women have become so independent. They can make their own money. They can provide a decent living by themselves. So in their mind, when they're looking for a man, they want a man to provide even better to what they have achieved by themselves. But I'm sorry, if an OnlyFans girl is making more money than an electrician out there who objectively brings more value to our society, she's not going to marry the electrician. She wants a man who drives a Lamborghini, flies his personal jet. That's how delusional women have become. They think that just because they make money, in addition to evaluating themselves based on the feminist merit, based on the feminist characteristics, they are also outclassing themselves,
Right.
like removing themselves from the sexual marketplace, like objective sexual marketplace. Whatever they want, it's just it's just in their mind.
Yeah. So yeah, and what happens is they can either get desperate and settle for a beta blue pill loser in their 30s, and they'll be happy for a little bit, and then just wait a few years after the kids, and they wreck somebody else's life and drop their kids off at the daycare center and go back to their careers. So yeah, they'll do that and tend to do that in their 30s, like the epiphany phase. We don't need no man, but all of a sudden, nature starts calling. They realize time's running out for them. They may settle. Their standards may change, but they'll probably still look for a man that has money, but like they may not be actually physically attracted to them. They might not have the actual physical attraction to them as to the man's mental fortitude and physical fortitude as well. And so what happens is they get with these poor chumps. The chumps wipe them up, have a couple kids, and then she moves on and he gets wrecked. But she actually ends up being more miserable as time goes on. Well, because she's still getting older, and now she has kids in tow. So,
see, I maintain that women they cannot love a man they don't respect, and so when you're just getting with the Mr. Right Now because you're looking for that security phase, you don't actually respect him.
No, they don't.
And so they have no problem leaving and just saying,
right.
With the moment somebody who's even a little more respectable comes along. So that's my view.
Yeah, and a lot of women get duped by men. Like they think that, I can get all with these men. They think in their past experiences, well, I was flown out to here. This guy got with me. This guy got to me. It's like, yeah, but why didn't you stay with them? Because a lot of those guys, it was pump and dump.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they'll probably get the same thing, after they're done with the beta guy, in their 30s.
Well, and see, this is why I'm having. I understand why guys are spinning plates. I understand from biological standpoint, right? Because they have options and women fall for it, but they are sort of not helping with the female delusion, because the moment an alpha Chad, let's say, who has money, who has status, who has everything a woman wants, right? He sleeps with a woman who is below his scale, let's say, on 1 to 10, right? He's a 10, let's say, and she's a 6, or she's a
Right.
5. And in your mind, it clicks that, oh my gosh, I got him, because women are more emotionally invested into sex. So the moment she spreads her legs and she has sex with a guy, she becomes emotionally attached to him, right?
Mhm.
So she thinks that she owns him, and this is the kind of guy that now she can attract. And this ruins women later
Mhm.
on, you know, because they become so delusional. They are so focused just on that guy who slept with them, and they subconsciously think that this is the kind of guy that she deserves now, just because one guy from above slept with her.
Yep. And so they'll never be pleased. So once they actually get with the guy that they could capitalize on, she'll internally never be pleased because she was in her mind with the hotter guy, a better guy, you know.
Yes,
Mhm.
the alpha widow.
The alpha
very good.
and the more her body count is, the higher chances of her encountering the alphas are. So
Mhm.
if a man, like the next man who tries to wife her, he will have to out alpha all of the alpha men that she had encountered in her life. And if her body count is too high, this is what I've been talking to my husband actually recently. The higher the number of your sexual partners, the statistical probability that she had more alphas
Mm.
is, you know.
Well,
So
specifically, the higher number of, so I don't know that a beta type person actually matters to a woman. I've almost started to use the term alpha count instead of body count,
yes,
because
Ooh.
well, when you think about it, what men are trying to figure out when they're asking your body count is how many alphas have you had in your history, and because the more you've had, the more likely you've had one that I can't even overcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if we're just talking about raw alpha impact, there's a guy out there who Rolo talks about this, the Katy Perry song, where she's pining for the one who got away.
Mhm.
It's like if you're out there and you've had so many guys, and the chances of one of them being that alpha that you just can't get over is much higher. Whereas you've been with a woman who has a low count, she's much more likely to either never have been with an alpha or been with one that, well, if you're a masculine man, you have qualities as well that she could, respect.
Mhm.
So
So this is the chaos of like relationships, absolute chaos
mhm.
in society, and we wonder why everybody's so really screwed up. Like, at least like, so we make our marital decisions based on this crazy like sexual market value. When, not to say it never mattered in the past, but in the past, marriages was, so they had morality. You're supposed to, not sleep around, and society frowned on that, and sometimes, punished people for doing that. There are consequences. And also in marriage, families were involved. It was like alliances between families or related businesses, and the church was involved. So the community all knew each other. They could vouch for each other's character, and it would cement the relationship. So a wife would get with her husband, usually because, they probably knew each other growing up, or their parents were somehow involved in business together, or were somehow associated with in business, and they would form these agreements, these marriages, and the families were deeply invested in keeping those marriages together, because it impacted not just, their, not just, their kids, but it impacted business as well.
Yeah,
And
this
it
just
can
you.
impact nations if you're a nobility. So it could impact, alliances and nations.
I think you're speaking to the fact that families were a lot more involved in marriages, not just the marriage itself, but the lead up to getting married throughout history. The mom and dad were involved. They were heavily vetting on both sides.
Mhm.
And we don't do that anymore, which I think is part of the reason why we have such a problem with divorce, is because there are cases where if your dad had vetted, like, let's say you're a woman and your dad had vetted that guy, you would have never you would have watched your dad disassemble him in front of you, and you would
Yeah.
go, oh, I can't respect that guy, and that's it, it's over.
Right.
But a lot of dads today, they don't know how to disassemble the guys. They just, oh, will you make her happy? And the only merit for happiness is your emotional well-being, right? So she's satisfied. Will you satisfy her? Because the dads are simping for their wives themselves, and they're simping also for their daughters. So the daughters and the wives, they usually unite and they make this collision against dad, and then there is just yes ma'am all the time, so how would he evaluate a younger man if he doesn't know what it is to be a man?
Yep. This is the generational problems. It gets worse and worse and worse as people walked away from, the basic building blocks of society, which is the family unit, as they walked away from God. So apostasy, walking away from God and his order has consequences. They don't always appear readily at that moment, but the checks don't bounce. I think Doug Wilson said the checks don't bounce immediately.
What happens when the checks bounce?
You're living it.
Yeah. it was exactly. Hey, just wait. If this economic system collapses, just wait.
Oh, what do you mean if?
When the second Weimar Republic collapses.
Here come the conspiracies.
Oh no, I'm not going to get started on that. No.
Yes, Sam, don't get him started on this topic. Okay. Well, that was interesting, guys. I really enjoyed today's conversation. We will try to have Nick more often. Nick, would you be able to join us occasionally?
Yeah, just ask, and I'll see if I usually have time on the weekends, but we'll see. I won't next weekend. So
okay,
I've found this really challenging because my religious background, I was taught. Whereas you guys are talking about how men should be from the Bible's point of view, my religious background was very much putting on the women how we should be. And I'm not talking from a feminist point of view. I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, okay.
So we were very much, as women, very much beaten down.
Okay.
So we didn't ever, the men were it, if you know what I mean, and not being derogatory to men at all. It was very much putting us that, the men were the head of the household, and the women should be subservient. When you were talking before about the head being covered, I found it really interesting hearing from your point of view, from the way you're teaching it. How I was always taught it was women should have their heads covered in relation to teaching, or if we were holding a Bible study, we had to wear a literal head covering if there was men around.
Oh, that would, at the time, if there are women, I don't think it was actually happening. There's different interpretations historically.
I realize.
But I don't believe in a continual gifting of the Holy Spirit. So some people would say this was an occasion where a woman who had the gift of prophecy could address the church. They required her to be covered. I don't think that's actually what was going on there. So I
mean,
do think that the women were prophetesses back then, but I don't think they did it publicly like that. So,
but no, it's really interesting. It's
yeah,
challenge. I suppose in a way, when you're going through the scripture, that the old teachings that I've been trying to shed,
right,
their teachings, it's triggering me, but it's also challenging me in a good way. So
right.
thank you.
Yeah, so duties go both ways. Like, men have certain duties and women have certain duties in each relations, and there's also shared duties that they owe one another. So.
Yeah.
Well, Emma, if you have more questions, we can get Nick back in the future sometime.
Yeah,
Well,
prepare your questions.
So this is why I've been quiet, if you know what I mean. I'm having a little sort of thing going on in my head. It's been great. Thank you.
I'll say, I said this to Glenn. I'll say one thing that'll be really triggering, but it could be in a good way. So some women might not like it. Some might think it's kind of funny. So I do believe like there's inferiors, superiors, and equals, right? So I started off making this joke a while ago. Some people didn't get it. I said, yeah, men generally are superiors in the relationship to the wives. They're the superiors in the relationship, and they have duties that superiors owe to the inferiors, and the inferiors owe to the superiors. But it's interesting in 1 Corinthians, I think it's chapter 6, or is it? Yeah, I think it's 6, where they talk about the conjugal duties they owe one another, right? Like a man's not to have authority over his body, a woman's not to have authority over her body, but to render to each other their rights. So I find some of these older, they talking about hierarchies and these older commentaries on this. They think each, in this instance, a woman can be the superior over her husband.
Well, yeah.
So like in the conjugal relations, like when they owe each other, they're supposed to have sex together. No, the man cannot claim. Well, the woman can claim superiority over her husband in access to him.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
As I said, some people might like them, some people not. But hey, it is what it is. So.
You mean superiority in terms of like possessiveness, like
no, like access to sex.
Oh, access to sex.
She's like, if she desires him, she's hers. She has those rights of a superior over his body.
Huh.
Yeah, and vice
wow,
versa.
I like this one.
Yeah.
I like this.
Oh boy.
I'm reading in the comments. Charlotte asked, sorry, I think she's asking me about what I said about the women having coverings, and did they have their faces covered? No, they just wore a head covering.
Yeah.
That's one thing they don't teach, is about face coverings.
No, I don't see. That was like something like the Assyrians did. Like those, they were really terrible people. Yeah, the head covering, it's pretty much universal. Like women covered their hair in church for the worship service. I think that's generally the correct one. There's debate on whether it's like a cloth. I think in like a lot of the Church of Scotland people, they have the ladies just wear a cap on their head. So yeah.
The congregation I used to be, I mean, women generally, when we went to service meetings, we always had to wear skirts or dresses, and obviously I think we were allowed natural cleavage, and the skirts had to be knee length or longer. I got pulled up once because my skirt was 2 inches above my knee. I might excite an older brother, but and we didn't have to wear head coverings in the Kingdom halls, but there was sometimes we used to have a deaf person turn up, and there was only one person in the congregation that could sign, and that was a woman, and so she used to have to wear a head covering when she was signing while the service was going on.
Question for you: what's the natural cleavage thing? Is that like if you've got fake tits, you're not allowed to show them at all, but if you've got real ones, you're allowed to show them off?
You're basically not allowed your top down here, with it all hanging out. So if your neckline was to about here, you'd just have a little bit, and that's called natural cleavage.
Oh.
Yeah, you're very controlled.
You should. You don't have to be ridiculous, but yeah, you should have modesty, but
I look at this as a case of a lot of Christianity. It has become form over function. It's about measuring the exact distance. I mean, because you were saying, oh, it was 2 inches.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Military code of conduct. You may have
Yeah.
1.25 inches
yes,
of crack line.
exactly.
I mean, my normal response in the real world would be like, well, that elderly brother shouldn't be looking at my legs, but you can't with it when you're being cornered by the elders. You're not allowed to lip back.
Well, hey, duty works both ways, right?
Yeah.
So I'm that those sort of silly rules. I think it becomes a distraction.
Yeah, there's bigger things to worry about.
Yeah, it's form over function.
Yeah, I feel they're more about the rules and control than actual worship, but that's a whole nother conversation, really.
Yeah. You're supposed to worship in spirit and in truth. So the internal and according to the moral law of God. So according to God's dictates, but also to willfully want to serve God from your heart, not just go through the forms. So
yeah.
Cool. Okay, and here we are going to wrap it up, guys.
right.
I hope that everybody has learned something from today's meeting, and thank you, those of you who joined us today. Thank you, Nick, for your time and
Thanks for having me.
For educating us about the Bible. And we would love to have you again, maybe in a couple of weeks. And thank you, Emma. As always, appreciate you. Yes, guys, follow Emma on her Instagram. And then Sam, great to see you. Always a pleasure. Melody, we miss you.
Ooh, the tone.
Yeah, we are glad to see you. And thank you, Plutarch, also for joining us and for waking up. Cool. And Ashton, as always, great to see you. Okay. Take care, everyone. Prepare your questions for next time whenever we have a meeting with Nick and Glenn Lawrence, so that you can ask your questions to the guys in regards to the Bible, religion, relationships, church, anything. Okay. And I'll see you all later. Okay, let me take us out.
Bye.
Bye.